You've seen the pictures, right? That gorgeous old farmhouse, the sun setting over these golden fields. It's the promise of a simpler, better life. But what's really going on behind that perfect picture? Today, we are going to tear down that romantic rural dream and look at what it actually takes to build a life out in the country, based on the stories of people who've done it.
And this is where it always starts, doesn't it? It starts with a feeling. This quote just nails that initial pull. You're not just looking at a house, you're feeling something. It's that sensory magic, the way the light comes through that old wavy glass, and it feels like you could almost touch it. It's a kind of beauty that feels like it has a story, like it's been earned.
Okay, but that beauty comes with a big question. For every one of those perfect, breathtaking moments, there's a hidden price to pay. A challenge you're never ever gonna see in the real estate photos. So let's start peeling back the layers and see what's really going on under the surface. First up, let's talk about the sensory world. This is about understanding that the reality of a place isn't just what you see. It's what you hear, what you feel, long before you even think about things like a mortgage. So that physical texture of light we talked about, it comes from all the beautiful imperfections of old buildings. You can just picture it, a house in Coleraine with these amazing heart pine floors, or maybe a Victorian in Henderson where the sun is just dancing off the pressed tin ceilings. Stunning. But, and this is a big but, that beauty has a real cost. Those same wavy, single-pane windows mean it's freezing in the winter and boiling in the summer. That sensory richness comes with a very practical price tag. And it's not just what you see, of course. It's what you hear. We have this idea that the countryside is silent, but that's not quite right. When you take away all the human noise, you just make room for a whole different kind of sound, and it's incredibly rich, incredibly full. And that fullness is made of these amazing little details. Like at a property out near Whittier, you can actually hear the difference between raindrops hitting oak leaves versus pine needles. You can feel this low hum of the wind moving through the valley. But here's the flip side. That same wind, when it's howling through your old window frames for weeks straight in the middle of winter, well, that can start to mess with your head. It can make you feel a kind of loneliness that city noise just can't touch.
Okay, so beyond what you see and hear, there's the sheer amount of work. The fantasy of chopping your own firewood is one thing. The reality of having to be your own plumber, your own mechanic, and your own logistics manager, that is something else entirely.
This right here is one of the biggest adjustments you have to make. Distance stops being a number on a sign and becomes something you feel in your bones. A 35-mile drive into Fayetteville, for example, isn't just a drive, it's a mission. You don't just pop out to the store because you forgot milk. Nope. Every trip is planned, with multiple stops to make every single mile count. What's a 20-minute task in the city becomes a 90-minute expedition in the country. And all this means you have to become a generalist. This isn't a fun hobby, it is a basic survival skill. One person told a story about a pipe bursting in their workshop out in Wadesboro. The nearest plumber, 40 minutes away, and they were going to charge triple just for the drive. So you learn to fix it yourself, or you get ready to pay big time.
Now, that hidden workload is one piece of the puzzle, but then you have the forces that are completely out of your control. Out in the country, you learn pretty fast that nature isn't just some pretty backdrop. It's the boss.
$15,000. That number represents one of the most fragile, critical systems you've got, your water. And look, this isn't just some abstract number. It's the real amount of money an 83-year-old woman near Whittier just didn't have. When her well failed, she spent 2 years hauling her own water from a spring. A story like that just completely changes what you think living off the grid means.
And it's not just about the well going dry. It can be the high iron levels in Clinton that stain everything you own a weird shade of orange. Or, if you're near Belhaven, it's the constant threat of salt water seeping in and ruining your fresh water. You learn very, very fast that turning on the faucet isn't a right. It's a gift, and it could be gone tomorrow. The same idea really applies to safety. In the city, safety is an institution, right? You call 911. Out here, safety is personal. It's about you being competent. It's knowing what poison ivy looks like, knowing which snakes are venomous, and just accepting that your cell phone probably won't work 2 miles down the road. There's this harrowing story of a woman who broke her ankle and had to crawl for half a mile just to get a signal. Safety isn't a service you call, it's a skill you learn. So dealing with the physical landscape is one thing, but figuring out the human landscape, the community, the history, all the unwritten rules, that's just as important. And honestly, it's often way more complicated. You literally have to learn a new language, especially when you're looking at property. See investor special? Yeah, that probably means the foundation is cracked. But it goes even deeper than that.
In one town, an agent actually refused to show a house to an out-of-state investor because she knew he would just flip it and hurt the community. That's the kind of human stuff you will never, ever see on a Zillow listing.
And that leads to maybe one of the most important lessons in all of this. The biggest costs, they aren't always about money. Sometimes they're emotional, and they're baked right into the walls of the house you're thinking about buying. This came from a conversation with an elderly woman in Coleraine who was selling her family's farm, a farm they'd had for over 100 years. For her, she wasn't just selling a piece of property. She was ending a family line. She pointed to a beam on the porch where generations of kids had marked their heights. When you buy a place like that, it's not just a transaction. You are literally inheriting the grief of that family story coming to an end.
So all of these stories, all of these realities, they bring us to the biggest rural myth of all. This idea of the rugged individual, the self-sufficient person going it alone. Yeah, it's time we tear that one down too.
You might think, well, at least the houses are cheap. And they might be. But a steady income? That's a different story. Rural communities often run on what one person called invisible economic calendars. In the mountains, tourism booms in the summer, and then everyone gets laid off in the fall. In a farm town, everything depends on the harvest. That steady year-round paycheck, it just doesn't exist for a lot of people.
So how do people survive? They rely on a strategy that's been called economic polygamy. It sounds complicated, but it just means having a bunch of different jobs at once. It's not a choice, it's how you make it work. So you might be a carpenter, but you're also working a few shifts at the local store, helping a neighbor with their farm, and maybe selling some crafts online. It's not about getting rich, it's about surviving.
And this is what real self-sufficiency looks like. It's not about being some lone wolf completely independent from everyone. It's the total opposite. It's this deep, humble, constant negotiation with all of these systems, the natural world, your community, the local economy, all of which you know can and probably will fail on you without any warning.
Let me take you on a journey through 10 dirt-cheap farmhouses across North Carolina that completely reshaped my understanding of what's still possible in the American housing market today. I've spent months scouring rural listings, driving down forgotten gravel roads, and knocking on doors in towns so small they don't even register on most people's mental maps. What I discovered wasn't just cheap real estate. It was something far more valuable. Space, silence, and the chance to actually own a piece of land without draining your life savings. I started my search in Belhaven, a town so quiet you can hear the Pamlico River breathing against its banks. There I found a 1960s ranch-style home sitting on nearly 3 acres for $200,000, after the bank slashed $75,000 off the original asking price. Walking up the cracked driveway, I noticed the covered porch wrapping around the front, perfect for watching summer storms roll across open fields. Inside, sunlight poured through large windows into a living room that flowed seamlessly into a U-shaped kitchen with worn but functional cabinets. The primary bedroom had a surprisingly spacious walk-in closet, and the bathroom featured both a garden tub and a separate walk-in shower, a small luxury I didn't expect at this price point. But what truly caught my attention was the massive metal workshop out back, its sliding doors revealing enough space for woodworking projects, tractor storage, or even a small business. Standing there, I felt the weight of reality though. This was a foreclosure. The bank owned it, wanted it gone yesterday, and wasn't disclosing what might be hiding behind those freshly painted walls. I made a mental note. Anyone considering this place absolutely must bring a ruthless inspector. And while the rivers nearby promised fishing and peaceful sunsets, I couldn't ignore the faint water stains along the foundation's edge, a silent warning about eastern North Carolina's hurricane season. Dropping down to $185,000, I drove into Wadesboro and found a property that screamed potential but demanded honesty. This 4-bedroom house on over 2 acres wore its struggles openly. Cracked siding, a sagging porch corner, and foundation issues visible even from the road. The listing called it an investor special, real estate code for bring your entire toolbox and several months of patience. But stepping inside, I felt a flicker of hope. Over 2,100 square feet stretched across 1.5 stories, with 2 fireplaces anchoring opposite ends of the home. Upstairs, a bonus room with slanted ceilings begged to become a reading nook or home office. Most surprisingly, the HVAC system had just been replaced, brand new in 2025, saving whoever took this on at least $5,000 in immediate repairs. Outside, a large covered workshop stood ready for projects, and the 2-acre lot sloped gently toward a tree line where I imagined planting a vegetable garden or building chicken coops. The catch hit me when I checked financing options. Cash or conventional loans only. No FHA, no VA. Banks simply wouldn't touch a property with foundation drama. But standing there in the quiet afternoon, I realized this wasn't for everyone, but for the right person, the handy, the patient, the visionary, it could become something extraordinary. Pushing further west into the mountains near Whittier, I discovered a property that made my city-weary soul exhale for the first time in years. $178,000 bought me a 3-bedroom farmhouse nestled on just over 2 acres of wooded land, surrounded by the kind of silence that feels sacred. The house itself needed serious work, peeling paint, outdated fixtures, floors that groaned underfoot, but none of that mattered when I stepped onto the back deck and saw the Smoky Mountains rising in the distance like ancient guardians. Inside, a massive stone fireplace dominated the living room, its mantle worn smooth by generations of hands. A sunroom flooded with natural light begged to become a breakfast nook overlooking the woods. But the real magic waited outside. Multiple sheds already positioned for storage, a fully built chicken coop with nesting boxes intact, and flat patches of earth perfect for raised garden beds. I ran my fingers along the rough-hewn wood of the coop door and imagined pulling fresh eggs each morning, tomatoes ripening on vines just steps from my kitchen. The reality check came quickly though. This place sat 5 miles from anything resembling a grocery store, and steady jobs were scarce unless you worked remotely or lived on tourism income. But for someone craving mountain air and self-sufficiency, pure gold. In Coleraine, a town of just 291 souls clinging to the Chowan River's edge, I found a century-old home listed at $149,995. The moment I pushed open the creaking front door, the scent of aged wood and decades of memories wrapped around me. Over 2,100 square feet of history stretched before me. 3 bedrooms with mismatched flooring telling stories of different eras, walls showing where additions had been tacked on through the decades. But the backyard held the real surprise. A heated workshop large enough to park 2 vehicles side by side, complete with running water and electricity. And yes, there was actually a turtle enclosure with 2 little shelters, though the current owner was taking the turtles with them, leaving behind only the empty shells of their home. I learned the annual property taxes here ran just $1,185, a fraction of what I'd pay monthly in rent back in the city. This wasn't a move-in ready dream home, it was a project wrapped in history, waiting for someone willing to listen to what these old walls had to say. Henderson delivered my most breathtaking discovery. Vine Villa, a Victorian masterpiece built in 1888, now listed at $139,000 after a $51,000 price slash. Standing before its wraparound porch, I felt time collapse. 7 original fireplaces waited inside, their marble surrounds still pristine. Pressed tin ceilings reflected afternoon light in delicate patterns across formal dining and sitting rooms. A curved staircase swept upward with a grace modern builders can't replicate. Pocket doors slid silently along tracks installed before the automobile existed. Walking the acre-plus grounds, I passed beneath pecan and magnolia trees whose branches had shaded this property for over a century, their roots intertwined with brick walkways and a grape arbor heavy with potential. The tax records suggested this design might trace back to Samuel Sloan, the architect who designed North Carolina's governor's mansion. Yet here it sat, available for less than many people pay for a used car. I knew the responsibility such a place demanded: constant maintenance, preservation decisions, the weight of history in every repair. But I also saw possibility: subdivision rights potentially hidden in the deed, rental income from carefully restored rooms, a legacy waiting for the right steward. Reedsville offered a different kind of charm at $110,000. A classic farmhouse with 4 bedrooms and original hardwood floors stretching across over 2,200 square feet. The wraparound porch sagged slightly in the middle, but still held the ghosts of countless summer evenings. Inside, tall windows flooded spacious rooms with light, and the layout flowed in ways modern cookie-cutter homes never achieve. The lot sat peacefully beneath mature oaks, their branches creating natural rooms for gardening or simply sitting with a book. 11 miles outside town gave that perfect balance, rural enough for privacy, close enough for grocery runs. I imagined restoring the kitchen to its farmhouse roots, adding a second bathroom where a closet currently stood, watching this place bloom under careful hands. Elizabeth City surprised me with a relatively modern 4-bedroom home built in 2007, listed at $100,000 after a $29,000 reduction. Unlike the ancient farmhouses elsewhere, this one had contemporary bones, open concept living, decent flow between kitchen and dining areas. But it needed cosmetic resurrection: dated fixtures, worn carpet, a single bathroom stretched thin across 4 bedrooms. The real value hid in the details: A shared driveway with a 5-acre parcel behind the property offering privacy without maintenance burden, and the town itself buzzing with quiet growth. I learned about Centara Healthcare's $200 million medical campus rising nearby, 3 universities anchoring the local economy, Northerners quietly relocating for waterfront living without Florida's price tag. Yet I couldn't ignore the river's proximity. Hurricanes and tropical storms remained a real threat, requiring flood map checks and serious insurance calculations.
Clarkton delivered the shocker. $86,500 for a move-in ready 3-bedroom home on 1.6 acres. No, as is warnings, no foundation nightmares, just clean floors, functioning systems, and a storage barn already standing out back. In a market where everything under $100,000 requires a hard hat and contractor on speed dial, this place felt almost suspiciously normal. I walked through rooms that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, open cabinets that closed smoothly, tested faucets that delivered steady pressure. The math stunned me. Median rent in town hovered around $1,200 monthly. Buy here, rent out, and the numbers actually worked. Annual property taxes? $483. Less than my monthly cell phone bill back home. This was a flipper's dream. It was a quiet opportunity for someone wanting simplicity without sacrificing dignity. Clinton brought me face to face with raw potential at $63,000. A 3-bedroom shell on a full acre, priced after a $52,000 slash. The radiant heat system with an above-ground oil tank hissed faintly when I flipped the switch. Septic and well permits set neatly filed with the county. Paperwork in order, a rare blessing at this price point. But the walls needed serious attention. The roof showed wear, and the single bathroom felt cramped for a family. Yet standing on that acre of red clay soil, I ran the numbers. Invest $30,000 to $50,000 in smart renovations, rent it for $800 to $1,000 monthly, and build real equity. Or flip it in a market where comparable homes sold for double this price. The risk felt tangible but calculated. A gamble with actual odds in your favor. And then came Warrenton. The $40,000 property that made me double-check the listing 3 times before believing my eyes. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 928 square feet on a narrow lot in a town of 850 people. The roof held, the walls stood, but everything else demanded imagination or demolition. Water stains bloomed like Rorschach tests across the ceiling. The single window in the living room rattled when a truck passed on a distant highway. Yet the math refused to be ignored. Typical home values here hovered near $160,000. Property taxes ran $135 annually, less than most people spend on coffee each month. Standing in that dim living room, I pictured 2 paths forward. The investor route, pour $40,000 into renovations, rent for $700 to $900 monthly, watch cash flow materialize, or the homesteader path, gut the interior, rebuild with sweat equity, create a simple life on land you actually own. Neither path was easy. Both required grit, but both offered something increasingly rare in America, a genuine shot at ownership without generational wealth or 6-figure salaries.
Driving away from that last property as sunset painted the North Carolina sky in shades of violet and gold, I realized these houses weren't just cheap real estate. They were invitations to slow down, to get your hands dirty, to redefine what home means when you're not trapped in bidding wars against faceless investors. Yes, many needed work. Yes, grocery stores might be 20 miles away. Yes, hurricanes and floods remained real threats in the east, isolation a constant companion in the mountains. But what these properties offered couldn't be quantified in square footage or bedroom counts. They offered space to breathe, land to grow something real, and the profound dignity of owning a piece of earth in a country that's pricing ordinary people out of the dream entirely. These weren't perfect homes. But for the right person willing to trade convenience for character, they might just be perfect enough.
What made you decide to explore dirt-cheap farmhouses in North Carolina specifically? I chose North Carolina because it offers genuine affordability alongside geographic diversity you cannot find in most states. Today, you can drive from mountain ranges to coastal beaches within hours without facing California or New York price tags. I was exhausted watching friends get priced out of every market. They tried, especially after remote work opened up possibilities beyond major cities North Carolina still has. Rural counties where land ownership remains within reach for teachers and nurses. Tradespeople, not just tech millionaires or generational wealth holders. I wanted to see if the listings were real or traps, and what life actually looks like when you trade urban convenience for space and silence. What was the most surprising property you encountered during your search? The $40,000 house in Warrenton rewired my entire understanding of American real estate. Standing inside that two-bedroom home with water-stained ceilings and rattling windows, I kept refreshing the listing on my phone, convinced it was a typo, but it was real 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 928 square feet on a narrow lot in a town of 850 people. The roof held, the walls stood, but everything else demanded imagination or demolition. What shocked me most was a math-typical home values in Warren County hover near $160,000. Annual property taxes run just $135. You could invest $40,000 in renovations, rent it for $700 to $900 monthly, and create real cash flow, or live there while building equity through sweat equity. It felt almost illegal to find land and a standing structure at that price in 2026. How did you balance excitement about low prices with realistic concerns about these properties? I developed a 3-part inspection ritual before letting myself get emotionally attached. First, I walked the entire property perimeter, looking for foundation cracks, roof sagging, or evidence of water intrusion around windows and doors. Second, I drove to the nearest grocery store, hospital, pharmacy, and hardware store, timing each trip to understand daily life logistics. Third, I pulled up FEMA flood maps, county GIS records, and called local insurance agents for rough premium estimates. This discipline saved me from romanticizing places that would become money pits. The Belhaven property at $200,000 sits beautifully between the Pamlico and Pungo rivers, but those same rivers bring genuine flood risk, especially during hurricane season. I learned to hold both truths simultaneously: the dream of space and silence, alongside the reality of maintenance, isolation, and environmental risks. What surprised you most about the towns surrounding these properties? The human texture of these tiny towns caught me completely off guard. In Coleraine population, 291 people actually make eye contact, wave, and slow their trucks to let you cross the road safely. In Wadesboro, the waitress at Ladybug Family Restaurant remember my coffee order after our first conversation. These micro-communities maintain social fabrics that vanished from suburban America decades ago, but I also witnessed quiet struggles, main streets lined with empty storefronts. Schools consolidating due to declining enrollment. Young people leaving for cities with actual job markets. I met 80-year-old retirees living comfortably on fixed incomes alongside 30-somethings working 3 part-time jobs just to stay afloat. These places aren't frozen in amber. They're adapting slowly and unevenly. Some residents thrive in the quiet, while others feel trapped by limited opportunity. One stopped viewing these towns as either idyllic escapes or dying relics and started seeing them as complex living communities with real trade-offs.
Which property would you actually consider buying yourself, and why? If I were buying today with my own money, I would choose the $86,500 house in Clarkton. It lacks the romantic charm of the Victorian in Henderson or the mountain views near Whittier, but it offers something rarer at this price point: genuine move and readiness, no foundation nightmares, no roof replacement needed, just paint, flooring updates, and cosmetic love. The storage barn out back provides workshop space without sacrificing garage parking. The math works cleanly too. Median rent runs $1,200 monthly against $483 in annual property taxes, creating legitimate cash flow potential. And being 13 miles from Whiteville means you are not completely stranded for groceries, healthcare, or hardware store runs. You could literally move in tomorrow, unpack your boxes, and start living while gradually improving the place. That stability matters more than I expected when facing properties requiring $50,000 in immediate repairs before becoming habitable. How do flood risks impact the true cost of owning eastern North Carolina properties? Flood risk completely transforms affordability calculations in ways listings never disclose. I visited 3 properties near rivers where the purchase price looked incredible until I checked flood insurance quotes. Some ran $800 to $1,200 monthly, not annually. That erases any savings from the low purchase price instantly. One agent showed me a $60,000 house near the Pamlico River where flood insurance would cost $1,400 monthly, making true ownership costs higher than renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Raleigh. I learned to pull up FEMA flood maps before even scheduling a viewing. Properties in Zone AE or VE often require mandatory flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program, and premiums keep rising after each hurricane season. Always verify elevation certificates. Ask neighbors about actual flood history, not just zone designations, and budget for insurance as a non-negotiable monthly expense, not an afterthought. What did you learn about financing challenges for these rural properties? Most sub-$100,000 properties reject FHA and VA loans outright. Banks view them as too risky, especially with foundation issues. Well water or septic systems appraisals frequently come in below asking price-killing deals before they start. I spoke with a local lender who explained conventional loans require 20% down on fixer-uppers, while cash buyers, or those with renovation loans like FHA 203K or Fannie Mae home style, hold the advantage. This creates a cruel paradox. The cheapest homes demand the most cash up front, pricing out exactly the people who need affordability most. One investor I met carries $50,000 in liquid cash, specifically to pounce on these opportunities the moment they list. He closes in 7 days, while traditional buyers are still waiting for appraisal contingencies to clear. If you are serious about these properties, either save substantial cash reserves or partner with someone who has renovation loan experience before falling in love with a listing. How does the historic Victorian in Henderson compare to modern construction quality? Walking through Vine Villa, built in 1888, I kept running my hands over details modern builders simply do not create anymore. 7 fireplaces with hand-carved mantles, 7-inch wide heart pine floors that have survived a century of footsteps, pocket doors with brass hardware that still glide smoothly after 138 years, plaster walls 3/4 of an inch thick that block sound completely. The craftsmanship reflects an era when homes were built to last generations, not 7-year flip cycles. But that beauty carries heavy responsibility. Those single-pane windows leak heat like sieves. The knob and tube wiring, though partially updated, still hides in walls requiring careful management. The roof needs constant maintenance because finding replacement materials for historic slate or cedar shakes costs triple modern asphalt shingles. Owning history means accepting that preservation never ends. You are not buying a home, you are accepting stewardship of something that predates your great-grandparents and will likely outlive your grandchildren if cared for properly. What advice would you give someone seriously considering one of these properties? First, spend a full 24 hours in the actual location before making an offer. Drive to the grocery store at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. Sit at the only diner for lunch. Talk to the post office clerk about mail delivery reliability. Second, get 3 separate inspections: structural, pest, and environmental, especially well water testing for bacteria, nitrates, and heavy metals, plus septic capacity testing. Third, calculate true monthly costs, not just mortgage payment. Include flood insurance if applicable, road maintenance for long driveways, propane delivery if no, natural gas, and internet options because many rural areas still lack reliable broadband. Fourth, be brutally honest about your actual skills. Can you rebuild a porch, pour concrete, repair plumbing, or are you romanticizing YouTube renovation videos? Fifth, visit during different weather conditions. I saw a property near Whittier that looked idyllic in sunshine, but after a 2-hour rainstorm the driveway became a river of mud, revealing drainage issues no listing would ever mention. Finally, talk to neighbors, not just the listing agent. Ask how long power stays out after storms, whether emergency services respond quickly in winter, and whether the community actually welcomes newcomers or remains closed to outsiders. These details determine whether you build a life or endure isolation. How did the reality of these properties compare to their online listings? The gap between listing photos and physical reality ranged from minor disappointments to shocking deceptions. Some agents used wide-angle lenses and strategic lighting to make small rooms appear spacious. One listing claimed move-and-ready condition, but the front door would not fully close due to foundation settling. Another advertised mountain views, but tall pines had grown since the listing photos were taken, completely blocking the vista. I learned to scrutinize listing language carefully. As is usually means major repairs needed. Investor special means bring your entire toolbox, and price to sell often means the property has sat unsold for months because nobody wants it. The most honest listings came from local agents who had actually visited the property, not national franchises managing listings remotely. Always assume the worst-case scenario when viewing online photos, then let reality pleasantly surprise you, rather than the reverse. What did you learn about internet connectivity in these rural areas? Internet access emerged as the silent deal-breaker for many remote workers. I tested speeds at every property using a mobile hotspot, and speed test app results varied wildly. One property near Wadesboro had surprisingly robust fiber optic service thanks to a recent county initiative. Another near Whittier relied entirely on satellite internet with $200 monthly bills and strict data caps, killing streaming or video calls. Several properties had no service options beyond spotty cellular coverage, requiring expensive signal boosters, or accepting that work happens only when driving to town. The agent in Henderson admitted many young families leave not for jobs, but because children cannot complete online school assignments reliably. I now consider internet availability as critical as plumbing or electricity when evaluating rural properties, especially for anyone needing to work remotely or support school-aged children. Would you actually live in any of these properties yourself? Yes, but not the $40,000 Warrenton house or the foundation-compromised Wadesboro property. I would choose either the Clarkton house at $86,500 for its move and readiness and rental potential, or the Whittier Mountain property at $178,000. If I had 6 months and $30,000 to invest in renovations, the mountain property offers something money cannot buy: genuine silent star-filled skies and the ability to grow your own food, but I would only commit after confirming reliable internet options and accepting the 45-minute drive for groceries. The Clarkton house offers stability and cash flow with minimal risk. I could move and immediately rent it later or build equity slowly without emergency repairs derailing my finances. Both require surrendering urban conveniences, but they offer something increasingly rare in America: actual ownership without debt slavery. And after spending months in these spaces, I realized I value quiet mornings on a porch watching deer cross the field more than I ever expected. I just needed to find the right balance between romance and reality. How did the concept of privacy transform when surrounded by acres rather than city walls? Privacy in these rural spaces felt paradoxically more exposed yet more absolute than urban living in Charlotte. My apartment walls blocked sight, but not sound. Neighbors' footsteps, televisions, arguments traveled through shared structures. Here in Whittier, no human eyes watched my movements across 2 acres, yet wildlife witnessed everything: deer pausing at the tree line to observe my morning coffee ritual, hawks circling overhead tracking my garden work at night. Absolute darkness revealed my single lit window as a beacon visible for miles across valleys. Privacy became about intention, not barriers. I chose when to be seen by stepping onto the porch versus retreating inside, rather than relying on curtains and locked doors. The psychological shift surprised me. I stopped performing daily routines for an imagined audience of neighbors and moved with a naturalness city life had trained out of me, yet this freedom carried vulnerability. One evening, I realized anyone could approach my property unseen. Through woods after dark, no streetlights, no passing cars, no witnesses. This wasn't paranoia, it was physics. Rural privacy demands different security strategies: awareness, vigilance, relationship with neighbors who become your early warning system rather than locks alone. What unexpected maintenance rhythms did you learn these properties demand? These houses operate on seasonal cycles. Modern life erased. I spoke with a Whittier neighbor who described his annual ritual: late September cleaning gutters before leaf fall, early October stacking firewood under cover before rains, November inspecting chimney before first fires, January checking well pump after deep freezes, March clearing drainage ditches before spring rains, June treating wood porches before summer humidity, July checking for poison ivy encroachment along fence lines. This wasn't optional busy work, it was survival choreography. Missing one step meant cascading problems: frozen pipes, flooded basements, rotting wood. Each property demanded its own calendar based on microclimate. The Belhaven River property required pre-hurricane season preparations: boarding lower windows, checking sump pumps. The mountain property needed winterization weeks before town residents because elevation brought earlier frosts. I realized rural ownership means becoming a student of your land specific rhythms, not following generic home maintenance checklists. You learn when your driveway turns to mud, which trees drop limbs in high winds, where water pools after specific rain patterns. This knowledge accumulates slowly through mistakes, neighbors sharing hard-won wisdom, and paying attention in ways city life never required. How did the presence or absence of neighboring houses affect your emotional response to each property? Solitude transformed from romantic ideal to psychological test. Depending on context, the Warrenton $40,000 house sat with nearest neighbors a quarter-mile away through dense woods at midday. This felt peaceful at dusk after clouds rolled and the isolation became palpable, almost physical. A weight on my chest. The Whittier property offered visual privacy through trees, but I could see a neighbor's light across the valley at night. A silent reassurance of human presence. The Clarkton house sat close enough to hear a neighbor's screen door slam, yet far enough for privacy. That balance created unexpected comfort. I realized I needed what locals called good distance: not so close you hear arguments, not so far you feel abandoned. One woman in Reedsville explained she chose her property specifically because she could see her neighbor's truck from her kitchen window, not for surveillance, but for the quiet confirmation someone else existed nearby during winter storms. This nuanced understanding of proximity reshaped my search. I stopped viewing neighbors as intrusions and started seeing them as part of the property's emotional infrastructure, their presence or absence as critical as square footage or roof condition. What did you discover about how these homes handle extreme weather that city buildings never face?
These structures reveal their resilience or fragility only when tested by elements. I visited the Belhaven property after overnight rain, finding the crawl space damp, but not flooded thanks to elevated foundation blocks, a detail invisible during dry weather. The Whittier house showed hairline cracks in plaster, where mountain winds had stressed walls over decades, yet the stone fireplace remained perfectly plumb, a testament to mason skill. The Clinton property's metal roof had held against hail, but Improper drainage had eroded soil beneath one corner, causing subtle settling. I learned to look for weather scars, water stains on ceilings, not just current leaks, but patterns showing repeated intrusion, patched holes, where squirrels entered during winter storms, warped floorboards near windows indicating chronic moisture, exposure. One homeowner near Elizabeth City showed me how he'd reinforce his porch after Hurricane Florence, not with expensive materials, but with angled braces mimicking how trees withstand wind. This practical wisdom accumulated through generations of weathering storm city buildings never encounter. Rural homes aren't built to perfect codes. They're adapted through survival, each repair telling a story of what the land demanded and how previous owners responded. How did your relationship with time shift while spending hours on these properties? Time stretched and deepened in ways impossible in urban environments. Sitting on the Coleraine porch, watching light move across the Chowan River, I lost track of hours, not through distraction, but through absorption. The quality of attention changed. I noticed individual bees visiting clover, patches of precise moment shadows, reached the porch steps, the gradual cooling of air as sun dipped below tree line. This wasn't boredom. It was recalibration. My phone stayed in my pocket, not by discipline, but because urgency evaporated. No emails demanded immediate replies, no traffic jams created time pressure. I spoke with an 80-year-old neighbor who described this as land time versus clock time, explaining he measured days by sun position, animal behavior, and garden growth, not digital displays. Returned to Charlotte after these visits felt jarring, like re-entering a frantic dream, where everyone moved too fast for reasons that suddenly seemed trivial. Rural properties don't just offer space, they offer temporal generosity, the radical luxury of hours unfolding without monetization. This shift surprised me more than price differences or square footage. It was a hidden currency these places traded in, and what many buyers actually seek without knowing how to name it. What surprised you about the quality of craftsmanship hidden beneath cosmetic neglect?
Peeling wallpaper in the Wadesboro house revealed horsehair plaster applied over hand split lath, each strip fitted with care, no modern drywall screws in sight. The Clinton property's sagging porch hid mortise and tenon joints hand carved into oak posts, still solid after 80 years despite surface rot. The Victorian's water-stained ceiling concealed pressed tin panels with intricate patterns requiring skilled metalwork, now impossible to replicate affordably. I ran my hands over floorboards in Clarkton, discovering wide heart pine planks 7 inches across with tight grain modern mills cannot produce because old growth forests vanished. These houses were built during an era when labor was cheap and materials abundant, resulting in structural integrity that outlasted cosmetic finishes. A sagging roof might hide rafters sized for heavy snow loads. A cracked foundation might sit on hand-laid stone footings deeper than modern code requires. This realization transformed how I assessed properties. I stopped judging by surface condition and started hunting for bones, the underlying craftsmanship that determines whether a house can be saved or should be abandoned. The difference between a $50,000 renovation and a $200,000 teardown often hides in details, only visible when you look past peeling paint and stained carpets. How did interactions with previous owners reveal stories listings could never contain? The Coleraine seller spent 45 minutes showing me not just rooms, but memories. This window faced east, so her mother watched sunrises while drinking coffee. This closet held 3 generations of winter coats. This floorboard creaked in a specific rhythm her father used to announce his return from night shifts. She wasn't selling a house, she was transferring guardianship. The Warrenton seller refused to discuss price until I promised I would not demolish the house, explaining his grandfather built it with lumber milled from trees on the property in 1939. The Henderson Victorians' owner shared blueprints discovered in the attic, confirming Samuel Sloane's architectural influence, but also revealed the house survived Sherman's March because a Union officer's wife recognized the architect's style and ordered protection. These stories carried emotional weight, affecting my perception of value. A house becomes harder to flip when you know a child took first steps on those floorboards when you learn the pecan tree out back was planted the day someone returned from war. Rural real estate transactions often carry this unspoken layer. Previous owners assessing buyers not just for financial qualification, but for stewardship potential, whether you will honor what they built or erase it for profit. What did you learn about the hidden costs of distance beyond gasoline expenses? Distance-extracted payments. I never budgeted for the Bellhaven property required a second vehicle designated as the mud truck because the main car would not survive constant unpaved road driving. Adding insurance, maintenance, and depreciation costs. The Whittier house needed a generator $5,000 minimum because winter ice storms regularly knocked out power for days, requiring fuel storage and maintenance. The Clarkton property demanded bulk buying, freezers and pantry space because Driving 13 miles for one missing ingredient became unsustainable. I met a woman who calculated her true grocery cost included not just food prices, but vehicle wear, tire replacement, and time, valued at $15 hourly, making that 13-mile trip cost $42 before food even entered the cart. Emergency preparedness became mandatory, not optional. Extra first aid supplies, backup medications, stored water, because ambulance response times exceeded 30 minutes in some areas. One resident kept a detailed log of all drives, tracking not just miles, but time, stress, and vehicle impact, realizing rural living demanded a hidden infrastructure of planning, storage, and redundancy. City life provides invisibly through density. Distance wasn't just inconvenience, it was a tax paid daily in time, money, and mental bandwidth most listings never disclosed. How did the quality of darkness at night reshape your understanding of these locations? Darkness in these rural places possessed physical density absent from light-polluted cities. At the Whittier property, I stepped outside after sunset and experienced true blackness, so complete I could not see my hand 6 inches from my face until my pupils adjusted 30 seconds later. Then the stars emerged, not as scattered pinpricks, but as a textured river of light, the Milky Way visible as a cloudy band stretching horizon to horizon. I witnessed satellite movement, meteor showers, and the slow arc of constellations across hours, a celestial display city dwellers pay thousands to experience at observatories yet take for granted here. This beauty carried practical consequences. Though no streetlights meant navigating uneven terrain with only starlight or a headlamp, no ambient glow from neighboring houses created disorientation during power outages. One resident described learning to move through her home blindfolded so she could navigate safely during winter blackouts. This darkness also affected wildlife behavior. Nocturnal animals moved freely across properties, requiring new awareness. I left understanding rural night isn't empty space, but a presence demanding respect, adaptation, and sometimes fear. Not the sanitized darkness city parks simulate with security lighting. Rural darkness teaches humility, reminding you daily that human control over environment remains partial and temporary.